Okay, this next method is we're going to do a painterly method, kind of mimic the way that I would or any traditional painter would approach this on traditional canvas, try to replicate it in Photoshop or digital medium. Now, before we begin, I want to talk about what we're looking at, the observation process. That's really important. Now, this represents, this is our reference here, our still life. And this represents the, I just use a simple filter here to represent the value shape, specifically sort of the steps, how we go from dark to light or light to dark. Right, we have the darker the shadow, then the darker halftone and halftone, light halftone and light. So this is not 100% accurate. This was made by the computer and a filter. But what we want to do is approach the painting, the rendering, this way. So this is how we're going to think about our object in value steps, and then I'll show you how that actually plays out when we execute in the demonstration. All right, the first thing we want to do is tone the canvas. So I'm just going to quickly draw a square. You don't have to do this part, but just give myself a little canvas here to work with, just a square. And then I'm going to take sort of this painterly sort of brush here, just to give it, you know, that look of traditional medium. And I'm just going to, that value is a little too dark. I'll probably start with a, well, it's way too dark, like a light halftone in Photoshop and be around a 75%. That's a nice starting tone. It's just killing the white a little bit and giving myself some texture to mimic traditional canvas or paper or whatever. But it's a painterly way to work. See, that line looks kind of ugly now that I think about it. Kind of takes away from it. Is that line still there? Oh, it is still there. That's so ugly. I regret doing that now. And while I'm here, let me just give it a little bit of variation in value while I'm here. See, I'm at 75. Let's just go, or 72. Let's go to 82. Let's see, maybe here. And then go to 62, 64. Just a little bit of value variation here. Kind of give it a little bit some more interest and more pop. So, and you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just killing the white. Okay, next. What I would do is block in the shadow shape. So clearly we have beautiful form lighting here. So I'm going to block in my shadow shape. Just take my same brush and I'm going to use a value about 50%. And for this example, well, I want to save the layers, but one thing that might be worth trying is to preserve, try to keep it all in one layer, just to keep it, you know, keep it totally cool and legit, which means, you know, be super painterly, obviously. It's not necessary, but something would be good for the exercise. So it's block in my shadow here, and I'm going to lighten my drawing layer. It's kind of, there it is. Looks a little too strong. All right. So remember, like the steps, let me bring back the reference. Remember here, the steps. We want to start to go from shadow to dark halftone, light halftone, halftone into the highlight. So that's our thinking. In fact, my shadow is a little too bright. I'm going to darken that. Got Photoshop slider, I can do that. And let's see. Oh, okay, so now I'm going to go to my color palette and see where I'm at here. Let me make a new layer just for this demonstration. I want to save layer. Okay, so I'm at 39. It's pretty dark, so I'm going to go to, let's just go to 4950 and start to build up into that. there, build up into the light. 49, basically 50. Let's go to 60, roughly 10% difference until we get right into our highlight there. And then back to 70, a little bit 70. So now we're at the tone of the little underpainting, little tone of our canvas that we just did. And then right outside the highlight, looking at this area, not actual highlight itself, but right outside of it. And finally, the highlight itself, which is be close to pure white. And just block that in there. And I'm going to try to soften the edge a little bit. Okay. So you see how we built up. The next obvious thing to do is just like with any other method, the shape method, for example, we want to start to soften the edges, right? This little bit of a chunky transition. You may want that. That's the advantage of this painterly method. If you want painterly and chunky, it does look cool. But first, let me address the value. Right now, overall, it's a little too bright. So I'm just going to start to darken our image. I'm going to first darken the background around it. Actually, that core stem would be helpful to get in there, just to give me some more context of what I'm looking at here. And so far, I use only one brush, my little texture brush. This is not necessary. You can use a hard round, but it just adds to that painterly look. And trying to make that edge a little bit more organic looking. Not so rough, probably need a different brush. Okay, I just needed that darkness around our fruit there. So now I just need to darken the shadow. I can probably get away with using adjustment layers, but let me try to do it manually with my brush. First, I'm going to start with a value that's like 20% darker at the, right now it's at 40, so let's just go at a, yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm just basically increasing the contrast here. I'm doing it slowly. Now I'm kind of going to a little too dark there. Now we're going to the core shadow here. Get that illusion of the bounce light. And we can still go probably even darker. But just for this example, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to roughly block in the stem. The stem is pretty dark. I needed that there for context. And let me drop in my occlusion shadow. That's typically the darkest part. Okay. So now we can soften the edges. So I could either, probably what I'm going to do is from here to here, I'm going to use the color picker. So I have a 20 here and 50 there. So there's like a gap in between. So I'm just going to kind of choose a value in between and lightly transition from there, transition from that edge to that edge. Basically soften that edge, blend the edge, soften, blend. Use a lot of color picker. You can also do it manually. So here we have from here to here, right? We need to blend that. It's a little harsh right there. It's a little harsh right here too. I'll soften that a little bit. The beautiful thing about this approach is that you can keep it chunky like this to get that nice chunky, blocky, painterly look. Or you can refine it and make it as polished and smooth and real, quote real, as possible as you want. Here I'm going to use a little bit of a harder edged brush to get some detail of this stem. The stem is quite dark, but I don't want to concern myself too much with the value now. And I can even use hatching. So how you get to the soft edges, there's so many ways to do it. That's more of a shading technique, but the principle is the same. Is the edge needs to be softened so the form reads correctly, and we get that more realistic look. And here I'm refining the contour. It's not necessary. Well, it is necessary if you want that, look. And it's refining the shapes that I drew, basically. So that's really it. It's a slow build-up from shadow to light. We started with a toned background. That's the important thing. So let's review real quick. It's important to review. Okay, first is the principle. So we're building up from shadow to light. What we did was start with the background, a nice toned background. In this case, about a 75% gray. Block in the shadow shape. Build up from the shadow shape into the highlights, and then the lights. From the halftone, from the shadow, the halftone to the lights. Now we're going to add value contrast. Basically, darken our shadow. Since we established our lightest light, we're going to establish our darkest dark. That's a value problem. But the most important thing for this demonstration purpose is to understand that the edges need to be addressed. Right? We went from kind of blocky and chunky to softening our edges to get more of that form to read, that curved form, more naturalistic form. Okay, and that's the Painterly method.